Hey everyone, and welcome to a very special crossover episode of Superhero Speak with the Mike and JD Show, and I'm your host, Dave.
John's not here. I'm JD.
Yeah, and I am Mike Gilbert, and thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate you letting me be on the show.
No, this is great. So of course we'll get into it at the end, of, near the end as we always do. But we're here to talk about the Iron Claw, and that's the whole reason I thought this was a great opportunity to do a crossover. And John's being a little bitch and refused to see the movie. So
John is in fact a little bitch. So he didn't even. Here's the worst part. I love John because John gets us to.
Hey,
Hello,
dude.
James Burton. Good to see you, my friend. John gets us to out of the comfort zone sometimes. I refuse to watch anime, but I make jokes about it. See, Mike, there are limits to my nerddom. And he's like, hey, we should go watch Godzilla -1. And I'm like, yeah, let's watch Godzilla -1. That's a great idea. And I wound up being like, dude, it's one of the best movies of the year. I absolutely loved it. So then I highly recommended Iron Claw on 2 weeks ago. And we were not last week, 2 weeks ago's episode. Dave, when the hell did we record that? Was that 2 weeks ago or a week ago? I don't even remember.
Well, we recorded it on like a Wednesday, and I put it up Friday, so it was like a.
Oh, that's
week and a
why.
half ago. Yeah.
That is why I messed up. All right, that makes much more sense. So I record, I'm like, hey, Iron Claw is one of the best movies I've seen in a long time, blah, blah, blah. And then Dave's like, hey, let's review this movie. And I'm like, yeah, fuck, let's do this. Let's talk Iron Claw. Let's talk wrestling. So then John just totally went off the not returning messages. Hey, Ronnie Pena, thanks for joining us tonight, my friend. See, look, I share it to my Facebook page for the first time ever, and I'm getting people who don't normally listen to the show. That's a good buddy of mine. Thanks, Ronnie. So, yeah, but John's a little basically and won't talk about some movie. So instead, we got one of my dearest friends in the whole world, the co-host, the leader, I'm the co-host, realistically speaking, of the Mike and JD Show, streaming live every Thursday night at 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central. The great Mike Gilbert, the guy who keeps our other show running, because as Dave will tell you, all I do is make jokes. I'm sure you both can agree with that.
I've got a really strong feeling that Mike is the Mike and JD's version of me.
Yeah. I honestly, Dave, I feel like you and I could just do a whole podcast where we just kind of bitch about JD. I think we
I think that's accurate. I'm pretty sure that could be a thing.
Yeah,
Mike, to be fair, I'm never in JD's show, but I am late to almost every Superhero Speak because I have to poop constantly on Sunday nights after dinner. So
yeah, he JD also understands that when he's doing a show with a master sergeant, you don't show up late. That just never happens. So we're always on time.
He would yell at immensely if I were. So I respect the chain of command, and I'm on time.
Yeah. Oh wait, let's see. Ronnie says,
"What am I saying? Do wrestlers watch wrestlers, especially the Von Erich brothers?" Man, that's what I'm saying. This is one of my good wrestling buddies from Illinois. So glad he could be watching with us tonight. So I'm super excited to talk about this movie. I'm super excited to have my two worlds collide. And this should be a lot of fun. Hopefully my internet doesn't crap out, as we were having problems with it on our show last week.
So how was everyone's New Year's? Let's start with that. Since Mike is the kind of guest here, how was your New Year's, Mike?
Man, my New Year's was really great. So we had this grand plan where we were. So I live in Hawaii. I don't know if you know that, Dave. But
it's funny because I'll be honest, I haven't really watched your show much before. So I
know
your Christmas episode where you guys were talking about movies. Yeah. And so I learned a lot. That I knew you have a military background now, and then you live in Hawaii. So.
Yeah, so I'm stationed at Pearl Harbor, Hickam. So it's like a joint base, an Air Force Navy joint base, Pearl Harbor, Hickam. And dude, New Year's Eve is huge out here. It's like a huge party night, craziness just going on all night. Well, I'm a 40-year-old dad with a wife and a kid, and so we did have plans to go spend New Year's on the beach and watch the fireworks because there's fireworks everywhere. And my wife actually made the plan, hey, this is what we're doing. And then by 6:30 p.m., she's like, I'm exhausted. I think we're going to go to bed early tonight. So I went to bed at 10 p.m. on New Year's, and I was happy with that. I was good with it. I got up at like on New Year's Day. I got up at like 5 in the morning, had a cup of coffee, went for a run. Like that was how I started my New Year. I started it off right. So my New Year's was tremendous.
Cool. How about you, JD?
Well, I coached days leading up to New Year's, so I was pretty busy. And then Andy and Michelle took the trip to her dad's house in Wisconsin. So they were in bed early. So I was just, and I kind of said, all right, I'm gonna see you in the new year by myself on the couch. And I did that. And I stayed up. I think I was watching like Professor of Rock videos on YouTube. And then at like 12:07, I went, okay, I'm going to bed now. I did, and then I spent the rest of the week by myself with the dog.
Sounds exciting.
Dude, it's this. All I do is coach. Like my whole life revolves around coaching at this point.
Yeah.
And I got no problem with it. I love doing it. It's what I live for. You know, my family came back today, and tomorrow we start school, so I'm excited to get back because I'm bored and I need some structure. I need you guys. I need people telling me what to do, or I'm gonna fall apart. Like Michelle was gone for a week, and I'm just like sleeping all hours. Like I'm not going to bed in time. Like I'm a wreck if left to my own devices. It's not good.
Yeah.
If Mike and I didn't have a show last week, I don't know if I'd have like cleaned up. Realistically speaking, I might have just been wallowing in filth.
Sounds.
How about you, Dave? How was New
right.
Year's?
I was good. It's funny because I guess I was the most wild of the three here.
Because you got like a girlfriend and a social life, and we're like dads. Like you're past all that stuff.
Well, I'm a dad too, but my youngest is
your
21,
kid's like what?
So 21, yeah.
21 now?
Yeah.
God, I was gonna say 18 or 9, gotten old on me. Like, yeah, man, you're like past all this stuff. We got like little kids. Like you're
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
like
old.
so we ended up going to like a Christmas light show. Which was I can't remember what town it was in, but it was like a half-hour drive. Then we went back to her house and drank a little too much, ordered hot wings, and then watched the ball drop. And then I will say though, we were in bed probably by 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Is that a euphemism, Dave?
No, it really wasn't. We were both exhausted,
Oh.
and that was it. Yeah. And then, but it's funny because I sympathize too with the small kids. I called my son because he wasn't with us. He went and did his own thing, but I did call him at midnight and said happy New Year's to him. I knew I wasn't gonna call my daughter. I talked to her the next morning because yes, they were all in bed by 7:30 because she has 5-year-old twins,
5-year-old,
and and a 3-year-old. So yeah, they were all in bed by 7:30. So
you're right, Mike.
What's that?
Mike, your daughter's 5, right?
She turned 5 back in September.
Okay, so yeah, same age.
Yeah, so yeah, I get it. I'm sure they got up bright and early. Probably didn't go for a run, but
no. My daughter likes to wake up. So she'll wake up about 6:30, something like that, and then she'll immediately want to watch she's really into My Little Pony, and she also likes like
so's John.
They
could hang out.
Wait, John's a brony.
John is a big time brony. That is a real thing.
So I heard about this on the Howard Stern show. Does he venture over into being a clopper, or is he just a brony? Because there is a difference.
Damn it! I wish he was here right now. I would lambaste him.
What is a clopper? What is a clopper? Hold on, I never heard that before.
Well, a clopper, and I got to keep my voice down because my family's outside. They're just downstairs, but they let's just say they get extra excited about My Little Pony, and it's very pleasing to them to watch them on the television.
Oh no, nothing pleasing. John's one of the most unhappy people I know. I don't think he's happy about anything. So there's no pleasing going on.
That's funny.
All right. You know what? I think that brings us to my new segment, the inappropriate joke of the week.
Oh, okay.
Wait, did I just do one?
Yeah. But here we go.
The segment.
So as a man, I'm not embarrassed to buy tampons, but I have learned they're inappropriate to give as a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, did you make a mistake, Dave? Is what I'm asking. Did you
No, it's not.
did you
Is that
err?
That was a Jimmy
That's a
Carr
different kind
joke.
of stocking stuffer right there.
This is the kind of stuff you get in the Mike and JD every week. Lame ass, dirty dad jokes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Well, and that's not as bad as I want it to go because John's not here. So that's the
Yeah,
whole
he
point
gets-
of starting that.
yeah, because he gets embarrassed when you tell like blue jokes. Like he gets all kinds of worked up, which makes clopper. Yeah, Ronnie's appreciative of that. I didn't know what a clopper was. I appreciate that, Mike, because believe me, that's going in the arsenal for next week. My Thrawn Kill says my 9-year-old was in bed by 10. That's good. I think my 7-year-old was in bed by about that time too.
Yeah.
He wouldn't stand up any later than that. So Dave, it's time to move on to show Mike the misery of not the misery of superhero speak. That's fun. The misery of social media madness. Something
Well,
we
of
will not
course.
be adapting into the Mike and JD show. Continue, sir.
No, not at all.
No.
We do
Mike,
right,
we do have a segment on our show called Bad Tweets, which is one
Yeah.
of my favorite segments. But I'm sure social media madness is probably a step above what we do.
Oh no. So social media madness is where Dave reads people who've responded to the show's Twitter and social media stuff for the week, and we get to listen to dumb shit that people tell us all week. Bad tweets are where we just make fun of other people's
Oh, okay.
stupidity. This is more
Yeah,
embracing
yeah.
the stupidity in our world, in our orbits
Oh, I
that
gotcha.
we're cursed with.
Well, actually, one of the things I've started doing is actually asking questions on social media to get an answer.
You have-
And
You have been doing that.
yes, so this week's question I asked was, "What was your favorite movie of 2023?" And start off over on Twitter. Kassan said, "It's really only Across the Spider-Verse and Everything Everywhere All at Once."
You
And
know,
then he
I
said,
never.
"Oh, I forgot, Amongst Thieves, excellent movie."
I didn't see that one either. Oh wait, that was Dungeons and Dragons, right? Honor Amongst Thieves.
Yeah, Honor
That's
Amongst
what that
Thieves.
was?
That was Dungeons and Dragons movie.
I
Yes.
did see that. I like that movie. I didn't see Everything Everywhere All at Once. I keep telling myself I need to rectify that, but I have not done that.
Everyone I know who's seen it has loved it, and I haven't seen it yet either. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, are you familiar
Uh,
with this movie?
I am, and as a guy that lived in Korea for a year, you'd think I'd have like a greater appreciation for Korean films.
Yep.
But I never watched it. I don't know why I haven't watched it. I just have not. And maybe it's just because I have a bias. Like when something wins a ton of Oscars, I'm like, oh, it's probably pretty boring. But
That's a good assumption.
yeah. But no, again, like everybody that I know that's seen that movie has really, really enjoyed it.
I have a film degree, and I agree with you.
Crispy Tortilla said Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, TMNT Mutant Mayhem, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Oh, and Barbie. It's an interesting one to throw in with the others.
A lot. That's a lot.
Okay, so Don replied with a GIF of Buckaroo Banzai, which is the movie that.
Is he aware that came out in 1984?
But remember, we did a retro review of it this year on this podcast.
Oh, we did do that. We did.
So I'm kind of wondering
I
if he had never watched it before and finally watched it this year.
Oh, that's it. It's not. How do I quantify? I know we had a whole show about this. How do I quantify Mike, have you seen Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension?
No, I have never heard of that.
Okay, Peter Weller, the guy who played RoboCop.
Okay. Yes, yeah, I'm familiar.
John Lithgow is the villain.
Okay, so
right?
Harry and the Hendersons. Okay, go ahead.
Harry would be a better John Lithgow villain movie to connect that with. Have you ever seen Ricochet with Denzel Washington?
I have, yeah.
Wild ass sci-fi, bizarre as all hell, yet a lot of fun. I think you might like Buckaroo Banzai. It's weird, but it's fun.
Yeah. I'll check it out.
Ronnie says Short Round was awesome in that movie. Everywhere all once. I am a fan of the Ki Kwan Renaissance. Like I really liked him. I'm disappointed he was not in the last Indiana Jones movie, which was not one of my favorite movies of 2020.
No.
I kind of suck.
I don't think it was anyone's.
Including
So
Harrison Ford.
So Wizard Podcast said The Blackening. I don't even know what that is.
I think that was that it's a black movie that's making fun of like horror movies, and I think they made fun of like black people always dying first in horror movies and stuff like that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, heard
That
good
came
things
out near
about
the
it.
end of the year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Random Randy Savage said, of course, Across the Spider-Verse, and Giovanni Dieldio. Someone new. He's at
Mike,
Master Geo. Said the
Mike,
John Wick Chapter 4.
Here's another pastime on Superhero Speak, Mike. Dave butchers everyone's name whenever he does these. He consistently puts it through a Cuisinart, and if you God forbid you have too many syllables in your name, and it will just go through the meat grinder.
It is pretty difficult unless you like email the person, like, hey, can you like enunciate this for me?
Right.
It's a gimmick now. Now we got to keep it going.
Yeah. Yep.
So Randy now is saying The Blackening, even though he already said Across the Spider-Verse on Twitter. He likes to do that.
He does do that.
Kassan, I think you would have. Okay.
I'll read it. Kassan says, I think you receive more very responsive to series Fall, the House of Usher, Beef, Blue-Eyed Samurai best. I heard nothing but great things about Fall, the House of Usher, the last Mike Flanagan project that they did for Netflix. And God, did I love, what was the name of this vampire show from a couple years ago? Midnight Mass. That was absolutely excellent. Flanagan's attached to direct The Dark Tower or Amazon Prime coming up. Geez, I hope that happens. Oh, there's Donna Megalomanirs. It's the greatest. I don't know what it's is. Pronouns, pal. You got to be more specific on what you're talking about there.
Buckaroo Banzai.
Dude. Oh, Buckaroo Banzai. Yeah, Buckaroo Banzai is pretty good. Randy also says, of all their podcast doing the exact same show in like a week. Yeah, that's true. This is kind of what a lot of podcasters are doing right now. Their best of the year.
Yeah. All right. Oh, and then I'm having a hard time loading it on my computer. So over on TikTok, we had Randy answer again. Same as yours. Across the Spider-Verse. My worst movie was a movie that made me sad. So I asked what movie was that, and he said Operation Fortune. A spy comedy with my celebrity crush, just garbage. And then 8-Bit Ray said a lackluster year of 2023 was the pickings are slim, so I'll say Evil Dead Rise. So
Evil Dead Rise. I don't think Mike, you said the same thing. You didn't care for it either, didn't you?
No, I did like Evil Dead Rise.
Okay.
I did, but Jade, I'm a little bit different than JD. I just disconnected it from the original series. Like I was just like, okay. And then, so once I did that and I just shut my brain off, I was like, okay, this is actually a pretty freaky movie. It was, a popcorn movie that I just happened to enjoy. I wouldn't put it in one of my top movies though.
Okay. So while you're here, what was your top?
Yeah. Yes.
You know what? Across the Spider-Verse is right up there. I really, really loved TMNT. I thought that was tremendous. And it was really important to me because that one I got to share that with my daughter, and then I started to show her the original series from the 80s, and she just loves it to where she was like wanting like Ninja Turtle stuff at her birthday party this year. So that was great. Blue Beetle I thought was like absolutely fantastic. Now, Dave, one thing you need to learn about me is that I'm just a complete meathead, and one of my favorite genres of movie, which I think is the greatest genre of movie, is just the 90-minute badass action movie. And somebody just put it in the chat, PBC, I was about to introduce it. Extraction 2. That shit was so badass. Extraction 2 with one of the Thor brothers, can't remember which one. It's like they're like the Olsen twins. I think they just take turns in movies. But what has one of the Thor brothers in there, and then the other one was Plane with Gerard Butler. I just absolutely tremendous. I know you asked me for one, I gave you 5. So sorry.
Hey man, I do a show with you. I know how this goes. So have you seen the trailer for The Beekeeper?
Yeah. I have. Yes.
Are you on board with that? I saw the trailer for that and at the Iron Claw and went, holy shit, I need to see this one.
Yes. Yeah, I'm totally on
Jake-
board. I actually just watched that trailer during football today. Yeah.
I'm pretty stoked for that one. Dave, what was your favorite movie of 2023?
Well, I will say that I will honestly say the movie, because it surprised me the most. It's the movie I didn't want to see that you guys made me see, and I ended up loving it, and that was Godzilla -1.
That was it? That was your favorite movie of the year?
I think that was my favorite movie of the year. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna put Guardians up there. I really liked that, and I'm trying to think what else came out this year.
Did Super Mario come out in
Yes!
2023?
That did come out.
Okay,
That did come out
okay.
this year.
That would have definitely made my top 5. Absolutely.
So I'm gonna
Randy
be
says
honest.
it's Chris Hemsworth in the
No.
Extraction movie.
The Thor
Just
brothers.
come on. I was
from
telling.
now on.
I was doing a PBC. I was doing a bit, brother. Don't ruin the bit.
Yeah. No, I could smell Mike Vick coming a mile away. That's what they are for the rest of time. Blue Beetle was terrible.
That's
You're
my
done.
friend Doug.
Oh, so
I've
you're
known
done,
him for
sir.
a long.
Can we kick Doug out? Can we kick
Get
him
out.
out?
I think this year was really shitty, to be honest with you, as far as movies go. I think this was a remarkably disappointing year, by and large. I went to the theater this year and was disappointed fairly consistently than I have been in a long
Yeah.
time with
Yeah.
movies. Yeah.
That's the
But-
thing, right? Like Multiverse of Madness. There was such a build up for that movie, and it was a letdown because it felt, I don't know.
That was 2 years ago,
Weird.
Dave. That was 2020. That was 2022.
Was it?
100%.
Are you sure that wasn't this year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
But you're
okay,
right.
Miss Marvel was
you're
a
right.
letdown. Flash was a letdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the year of a lot of, even Shazam, which I really liked the first Shazam. That was a big letdown. Like, so for me, the movies that I looked at to were that I really enjoyed, surprisingly. Across the Spider-Verse was excellent. That was such.
Yeah.
We saw it twice at the theater, and Andy really liked it. -1 surprised the crap out of me because I thought I was just going to see a Godzilla movie, and dealing with PTSD and trauma and like this love story in the background of a goddamn kaiju film blew me away. Like it had no right being as good as it was, and I
Yes.
loved it way more than I thought I was going to. And then in all honesty, the one we're going to talk about today are probably my 3 favorite movies of the year. I almost think we could do a show this year on like the disappointments of 2023. Thrawn Kill, you've never seen a Godzilla, you've never seen a current Godzilla movie. Stop what you're doing. Well, no, watch the show. After you've watched the show, go or do what Mike does in torrents, a copy of Godzilla -1 because it's that good. It's a great movie. Did I just bury you in front of everybody, Mike? I'm sorry, I had no choice.
Well, the FBI might be watching, JD. You got to be careful.
I've seen the numbers. I don't think so.
So Kasan says, speaking of Doctor Strange, I finally got to watch What If Season 2. Supreme Strange is a great villain. I've only watched the first 3 episodes, Kasan. I've not seen the one with Strange Supreme in it, so don't tell me what happens. And I know JD is not watching it.
Nope, no interest.
Are you going to watch Echo when it comes out?
Nope, no interest.
It's got.
I don't want to watch Echo. I want to watch. Yeah, but it doesn't have Daredevil.
It does.
I'm tired of C-list. No, it doesn't. He'll be there for like a minute. Like, dude, I'm tired of the C-listers. No more C-listers. Ronnie Pena says -1 Oppenheimer. Yeah, I didn't see. He's Iron Claw 3rd. I did not see Oppenheimer. I need to rectify that because I'm losing my my film nerd cred by the fact that I did not see Oppenheimer this summer.
Yeah, and I'm such a fan of like history and especially from that time period. I watched the documentary that came out on Peacock about Oppenheimer, and I thought that was fantastic. The movie just came out on VOD. I just have not watched it yet. I need to set time aside to watch it.
Randy knows what I'm talking about. I like the Marvels, most people, but I'm not gonna go done. Oppenheimer's way too long. Dude, it's Christopher Nolan. He's reached that Stephen King phase where people are afraid to act. Like no one tells him, hey man, you gotta take 10 minutes off this thing. It's just they say, okay, you get to do whatever you want.
Can I tell you guys a movie that I was just Can I tell you guys a movie that I was really disappointed in? And
Yeah.
I might get heat for this, but and I was afraid to say this publicly, but I'm on the show. I was bored to tears by Killers of the Flower Moon. I watched it and I was just like, I don't care. I was just bored and I could not wait to get out of that theater. I was in there for 3 goddamn hours and I finished my popcorn within the first 15 minutes and was pissed off. And like the rest of the movie, and I'm like like almost a die-hard Scorsese guy. Every Scorsese movie that comes out, I cannot wait to watch. And I was just so bored by that movie.
Yeah.
I have not enjoyed a Scorsese film since The Departed.
You didn't like The Irishman?
No, I honestly thought
No,
it was.
So
Right,
with
right.
that one, because it was on Netflix, I treated that like a mini series. I think I watched it in like 45-minute increments, which made it better.
Well, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
That's probably a good
Yeah.
idea because I just thought it was boring. Like I don't know, man. Again, Scorsese, he's an auteur, and I don't think he doesn't knock him out of the park every time, but when he's knocking out of the
Yeah.
park, it's tremendous. But I
Right.
think he's got some misses on that
He does.
card. Like that,
Mhm.
their
I
word
think
for
every
it
director,
at the moment.
every
Yeah,
director
for
like
sure.
that does though. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
I don't think every Spielberg movie has been like the greatest.
Dude, 1941 sucked. Dude, I hated Ready Player One.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
I did not care for that one.
I thought his remake, and I don't know why he even did it, of West Side Story was horrible.
I had nowhere to see that one.
Yeah.
Honestly, music. This is where this is like a Venn diagram here, and I'm kind of the middle, like on this episode of the one side and the other side. I lean with Mike on the meathead side of when it comes to Venn diagram, or when it comes to that stuff, and I'm just like, musicals, not for me.
Mhm.
No interest. Yeah, Ronnie agreed with you on the Flowers of the Killer Moon. I rewatches. Yeah, I can see that. I don't know, dude. It's hard. It's hard that much to a movie these days.
So
Long.
Randy, what do you mean by same with Cocaine Bear? You were disappointed in it?
I don't know how you could be disappointed with Cocaine Bear. Pretty much lived up to its billing. Like it gave you everything. It gave you everything it promised.
Yeah, it was so Cocaine Bear is kind of like Snakes on a Plane. Like
Yes.
it
Yeah.
promised to be absolutely absurdly stupid, right?
It-
So
it-
if you go into it like that with that mindset, then you're not gonna be disappointed.
And it promises everything the movie's about in the title of the
In
movie.
the title, it tells you everything you need to know. You know who directed
Yeah.
that movie? Do you know who directed Cocaine Bear?
No.
Elizabeth Banks.
Really?
No. Really?
From Zack and Miri. Yeah. Okay.
She have Pitch Perfect and Spider-Man,
Yeah.
the original Spider-Man movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
stretched
my
herself
God.
I did not
creatively
know
on that
that.
one. Yeah, kudos to her on that. So,
Cool. All right.
moving on.
Well, if you guys who are watching would like to know how you can follow us on social media, be part of Social Media Madness, and see some other great podcasts, here's our good friend Don to tell you more.
How's the show going? You join it? Do you want to be part of Social Media Madness? And go ahead and head over to superheroespeak.com where you can find all the social links, episodes of the show. You can find comic reviews by Chris and other articles. We're posting stuff on there all the time. And while you're there, check out the rest of the Geek World All-Stars Podcast Network. Great shows like the Pop Prison Power Podcast, Colt 45, Fans on Patrol, the Gorilla Brain Podcast, So Wizard, and Superhero Speak. Hashtag GW All-Stars, and you will not be disappointed. So make sure that you are engaging with the Superhero Speak Twitter post whenever they come up. Give us your best comment, and you may make JD say this.
I get so tired of these dumb motherfuckers.
All right, it's back to the show.
That's the best one. I'm sorry.
I think put you in that one. But it's true. I do get tired of the fuckers who are dumb. As Mike can attest to, I get tired of them on our show too. Dude, Mike and I texted Mike because I was listening to our show on my way, our Mike and JD show for this week on my way home from my trip this week, and I texted him. I said, "God, we're mean," because we went. Mike and I had this like, thanks, Ryan. Switching to YouTube. It's probably better to watch that way than on Facebook. Mike and I are we're like in the wrestling kind of exist outside of it. And I think our whole function is to kind of shit on the clout chasers of the world. And we just spent about a good, it's just freaking going off on by name. We weren't being like colloquially about anything. We were like, this guy, he's a fucking moron. That guy, a dipshit. Like but it was really funny. It's like, damn, we went off on people this week, and it was entertaining and kind of mean.
It was kind of mean, and I think the bad part is that we got a lot of compliments for it. So now I feel like they're rewarding my bad behavior by because I'm a guy who loves a good compliment, and so especially when you compliment me for telling somebody that they're a shithead, I am going to do that more.
We're a couple of us compliment whores, that's for sure. But the problem is we're right.
Well, while we're here, for those who don't know, who aren't watching this on your YouTube channel currently, where can they find you guys every week?
Well, so if you just go to the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel, you can just search Mike and JD Show, and we should pop right back up. We're the only two idiots named the Mike and JD Show, so I think that would work out just fine. But we also have a subscription service if you go to Patreon. So go to patreon.com/the Mike and JD Show. You get our regular show every single week. I do another show called Brace for Impact. JD has the JD Oliva Project. Plus, I do news bits throughout the week. JD does his articles, and we don't just talk pro wrestling. Like as Dave had mentioned earlier, we did a whole podcast about Christmas movies. We did an entire podcast about the JFK assassination and how I am a crazy freak for JFK conspiracies. We've done all kinds of stuff. So if you guys are into stuff like that, aliens, we talk movies, aliens, conspiracies. It's predominantly a pro wrestling podcast, but we can go in any direction that we choose because it's ours. We don't work for anybody.
Right.
And so, please check us out, Mike and JD Show on YouTube.
All right. And if you're watching us right now
find
on either channel, hit that subscribe button, click that bell for notifications. And what were you going to say, JD?
No, so you can also listen to us on anywhere you platforms. Part of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. So we're part of a great bunch of series on that line, much like being part of the Geek World All-Stars here. So it's always good to have friends. But yeah, we are available in many places. And if you like wrestling, or if you just like a couple guys that basically like talk shit, it's kind of similar to this show.
Speaking of friends, I got something special for you, JD. I got a new one.
Oh,
so let's
Randy made a new one?
Break, and we'll be right back.
Wait for this, Mike.
I like this.
I went to Japan and I shot with Hitomi.
She's the one with the really big boobs, right?
The huge natural boobs.
Asa would hype her up a lot.
Yeah.
Were you intimidated going into seeing these boobs?
I wasn't intimidated. I was excited because this was my moment. Glennie, this was my moment.
This is your moment to not be the biggest breasted queen in the video?
No. This is my moment to finally have Hitomi to my face. People dream of this moment. I dreamt of this moment and my dream came true.
How was it?
It was amazing.
And some podcasts are like this.
I don't take a shower. The only place I use soap would be my groin.
You don't take a shower?
Here's the thing. I don't take a traditional shower. I don't use soap. I don't use soap. Like, this hair has never been washed. The beard has never been washed. There's never been soap on my chest. We have well water. We have a lake. We jump in the lake. We get into a cold plunge. I don't pick out an outfit. My closet is just full of shorts. And by the way, the only reason why I dressed up today is because of you guys.
You dressed up?
I'm wearing my fanciest stuff. I'm wearing my fanciest watch.
I noticed the watch.
That's a good watch.
I'm wearing my fanciest necklace. Here's the thing, like, I just gotta be me. Nobody can be me the way that I can be me. Nobody can be Graham the way Graham can be Graham. Nobody can be Jack the way Jack can be Jack. Same for you, Alex.
But only one podcast is where you can get in-depth analysis like this.
I love how when she asked him what he does, and like, there was the most dated thing they could say. So I'm setting everything up for the 2000 Switch. And I was like, oh, I forgot Y2K was a thing. Everybody was so scared. Well, whatever since when it goes to 99, we're going to go back in time and everything's going to be all like, what?
And we go back to zero.
How about you just program two more numbers? You're like, why are we? Or just everyone just knows that it's not 1900 on account of computers exist.
Well, they were worried that the computers would know the difference and they would freak the fuck out, and then it would be Skynet.
Like, they're going to enslave us and put the black people back and fucking just, all right, well, back into your sheds. Like, what the fuck? The fuck is going?
You had your freedom too long. Now let's go.
It's time for you all to pick cotton.
You are now listening to Cult 45.
This is Beat 'em Down.
And I'm Random Randy Savage.
Find us on all your podcatching apps like Podbean or Spotify. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Or just go to www.cult45podcast.com.
Also, check out our YouTube for that sweet, sweet video content.
Cult 45, the only podcast that puts hair on your chest.
Jesus Christ, Randy. Oh my God, that was funny.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, you went way. Yeah. Hey, because that's our buddy. This is our buddy Mike. John's fine. He just didn't want to do the show this week. He hated the topic. Porn star stuff is usually fun. That was way something. Other dude on his balls, sees the ball a day straight in his ass. You know, Mike and I host a wrestling show. We know an altar if we see one.
Yeah. The Liver King, 10 cc's of Diana ball, liver a day. Absolutely.
You're familiar with the Liver King, JD?
I am not. No.
He was like real big on the internet for a while, talking about he was all natural, and he like had all these videos where he was like he was pulling chains and walking around and like showing that he was eating raw meat, and he sleeps on a flat, and then it came out that he's steroids.
Joe Rogan exposed him, and and he finally and he was going saying that people were defaming him for saying he used steroids, and kind of like a Hulk Hogan situation. Now that we're talking about the 80s, right? Similar thing, Dave. I don't know if you're how familiar you are with Hogan, but he was saying doing the training, the prayers, and the vitamins in the 80s, and he was doing anti-drug campaigns. And then of course it comes out that he was on the juice the entire time, and everybody knew that he was, but he was denying it forever. And then it came out in court documents that he was in fact a juice head, like the rest of the wrestlers.
Yes,
this guy. I'm familiar with a steroided up physique when I've seen them. Yeah, and then Randy, I'm gonna make sure I download the Office Space episode of Cult 45. Because I was in tears just at the commercial. So kudos to you, sir, on that one.
Okay. I will say this about the Y2K thing. And everyone makes jokes about it, but as a software developer and who has many friends and family that are also software developers who went through that, someone who will remain nameless, who's a good friend of mine, who works for
John?
one of the one of the largest military contractors, aerospace contractors in the United States. I will leave it at that. There are satellites up in space that are huge, like the size of football fields, and their programs are using 2-digit dates. And if they thought it was 1900, they would have miscalculated the orbit around the Earth and crashed into the Earth. This was the stuff that nobody knew about going on at Y2K. So it really was an issue, but it just wasn't like the things that were real big issues were fixed years before it was actually an issue. So
I remember when I was in college when that was a thing, and I remember people getting out about it, and I remember there were people that were emptying out their bank accounts, and because any chance people have to be stupid about something and load up on toilet paper and those kind of things because they're worried the end of the world is coming, they'll take advantage of it. Well, that joke was beaten now. Randy, it doesn't matter. It was recorded. It was funny. It was good. Don't let Dave ruin your humor. Don says tungsten god rod satellite. I feel like Dave. What the fuck are you talking about, man?
What do you mean? Oh no. Tungsten god rods. They're those. You don't know what a god rod is?
No, I don't know what a god rod satellite is. Educate me, guy who works in software.
That's a more modern thing. This isn't pre. That was pre. I mean, that's not. That's this. That stuff is post 2000. But they're these satellites that will shoot a tungsten rod down onto the Earth, and it's more devastating than a nuclear blast. Because
they
will destroy everything, and it won't have the radiation.
Yeah,
is that a thing?
It's a thing that could happen. It's a thing that could happen. Tungsten's just a type of metal. It's just a metal. It's got a little bit of radiation in it, but if they could shoot it from space, and all of a sudden it's all over for us.
Yeah,
Mike, is this a thing that I have to that you guys talk about? My friend who works in the Air Force, is this a real thing?
Well, you know, I was before I came here to Hawaii, I was at a place called Vandenberg Space Force Base, where the National Reconnaissance Office and
Why I'm asking you?
and all the spy satellites that get shot up into space through SpaceX and the different contractors, they actually leave from that base. So that is something that I have heard before.
The,
There's a
the satellite I
possibility.
was talking about was a spy satellite. It was an information gathering satellite, not one of these tungsten rod satellites.
Well, goddamn, ignorance truly is bliss. Now I had that to worry about too. Great.
I remember this friend who will remain nameless. Do you remember the movie Enemy of the State? Will Smith
Yeah,
and
Will Smith.
Yes,
Gene
tremendous.
Hackman.
Yeah,
Good movie.
and I remember watching that
Tony
movie.
Scott directed.
The
What was
late
that?
great Tony Scott. The late great Tony
Tony
Scott.
Scott directed. He's one of my favorite directors.
I remember watching that movie and then turning to my friend and going, "Is any of this real?" And he just smiled at me and he's like, "It used to be." As in, like, the stuff they have now is more advanced, and I'm like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah, this is why, like, when Mike and I will get into it, like when Mike and I do our conspiracy stuff, he's like Mulder and I'm more like Scully. So I'm like a little bit, you're like, I don't know. But then there's times he's like, we'll talk about aliens and shit, and I'm like, the fuck do you know, man?
Do you want to sleep at night?
No, no, never, never. Because I gotta know. I'd rather, like, my know-it-allness like works in like against my anxiety. Really tough spot to be in. Ronnie says, should we be worried about Zuckerberg building a bunker with all this satellite talk? Should I be worried? I yes is the answer to that question. I am absolutely terrified, but you know, we're all gonna die.
Yeah, we're all gonna die. It's that simple.
Move on.
All right, let's talk a little news. I got some nerd news. I don't know if I did say in the email if you guys had any wrestling news you wanted to inject, you could do that as well. Got nothing? Did anything happen in the last couple weeks?
Not anything that we haven't. Yeah, we had a monster of a show on Thursday night, and we covered everything pretty in depth to where. But since Thursday night, there has not really been any news worth talking
Kind of
about.
quiet,
I would say. Yeah.
Okay.
Mercedes Monet is working everyone trying to get paid a lot, and Mike and I are over the conversation, quite frankly. On that one.
Yeah.
Jack Johnson has come out and said that he would be willing to play Peter Parker. Jake?
Jake Johnson. Yeah,
sorry,
you did say Jack Johnson.
And I wrote back in the email.
You did. I'm like, what the fuck is Jack Johnson? Like, in my head, I'm thinking
I thought that was the Hawaiian folk singer or the
that's
boxer.
what I thought too. The boxer. And I'm like, why the hell would that guy? What? Either one of them is dead. Has been dead for 100 years.
Jake
the other guy
Johnson
is a folk singer. Why would he be? Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
He would be willing to play a live action Peter Parker if that was a meaningful role and it was opposite Chris. I'm not sure who he meant by Chris. But the thing is, I like that idea, right? Because you could see them throwing a cameo of him in as a stunt, but it would be pointless, you know? But like if he was actually doing something that was meaningful, that would be cool. What do you think? JD, I'll start with you. Would you want to see him play a live action?
Could he do it? Sure. Yeah, it would be fine.
Yeah.
I'm sick of the multiverse and everything. The last 3 years, we've just beaten the multiverse to death. Based on that, I don't want to see it. Like, I want to see the end of Spider-Verse because it's been excellent, right? And I don't know when that's going to happen. HBK is the greatest. I'm not going to acknowledge that. Just get away from that. Triple H. Oh my God! Get these people off the show. No, I'm tired of it. I'm tired. I just want movies with the characters that live in their own universes now. Like, and I lost my mind when Andrew Garfield had Portal in Homecoming, or which Spider-Man?
No Way Home.
No Way Home. I can never keep those straight. Yeah, I loved it. But I mean, since then we've had so many of them. And by the time I walked to The Flash, I was like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done with the multiverse. So I'm happy with him just doing his cartoon, and I'm good with it.
How about you, Mike? Would you want to see him do a live action?
If they wanted to do one after the current series is over, like if they kind of end it with the current Peter Parker that we have, and they because there's too much money in Spider-Man for them not to just stop doing Spider-Man movies. Like they got to take a couple years off and then reset it over again. Like that's been the pattern. So if they want to end it and then take a couple years and then reset it, but then that kid might be a little bit too old by then. Who knows? He might have a little bit too much hair on his face, a little too much bass in his voice to be able to pull it off. But
So Jake Johnson is Peter Parker in those movies. So he like the old fat Peter, like the middle-aged Peter Parker, like the mentor.
Oh, okay.
In this way. So that's the guy. So like, I get what you mean. And I had another point that I was going to make, then I forget what it was. What the heck did you say at first? What was your first point, Mike? Because I had Sony making these Spider movies. Mike, it's worse than you think. They keep making Spider-Man movies that don't have anything to do with Spider-Man. In a couple months, I'm gonna have to watch the Madam movie for this stupid show, and I have no interest whatsoever. I'm angry that it's even being made. I'm mad that I'm gonna have to see it. It looks like absolute putrid, drizzling shit. And we're gonna have to watch it and talk about it. And I'm gonna have to get on here and say this movie fucking sucks. But Sony's gonna keep making them. We have heat. And then the Craven the Hunter movie. We're gonna have to see that. That looks terrible. But Sony's got to keep that Spider-Man license going forever.
Hey, JD, because you have talked about Craven so much on our show, I cannot wait to watch that because I know it's going to be dog shit. But now because you've been building it up so much as the worst movie possible, I cannot wait to watch it. It's going to be great.
Honestly, Madam Web might be worse. That trailer looks so bad. Oh, yes, Dave.
What's Hassan saying? We're stupid? What?
It was stupid. What? Well, kind of.
JD said the show was stupid, and he
I was cursing for making me watch it. This show is stupid. Huh? What? You're wrong.
Well, I do agree with JD that I think I'm kind of done with the multiverse because I'll be honest, as much as I love Across the Spider-Verse, it did get quite complicated, right? And I think they need to just dial it back a little bit and just do a badass Spider-Man, going forward, kind of take a break from all the multiverse shit.
And you guys are gonna love our next story.
Oh
yes.
That's a hell of a segue, sir. Continue. I won't even make
Marvel has said they just come out that Marvel is going to recast Kang, but don't expect an announcement anytime soon. So they are going to continue on with the Kang Dynasty, and so that's more multiverse fun. Yay!
So Kang, that's the one that Jonathan Majors was going to do, right? But then he got jammed up. Okay.
Doing it. He actually a couple of them. I mean, he had been doing Kang. So I don't know, man. But I get this whole don't expect it announcement, like that beats me a lot of pause on what the hell's going on over at Disney. Like, are they just slowing down stuff because it was so clusterfuck of a year for Marvel?
Maybe.
I don't know. The fact they said that don't expect anything anytime soon makes me wonder what that means. I don't know what that means.
I think
like that's not their MO. They casted Terrence Howard. They recasted Terrence Howard over a weekend. They're like called Don Cheadle, hey man, take it or leave. That's literally what they did. They called Don Cheadle and said, hey man, you got to commit to this in 45 minutes or we're going to go to somebody else.
Yes, but a couple things with that. I think they were new at that point and they had momentum going and they wanted to keep it going. And two, like this is such a big blow to them at this point, and they don't want to just cast anyone and then like have blowback from that. So they're probably trying to separate themselves from the news of his arrest and his conviction before they recast him.
But what do you do then when like that's supposed to be the central villain for the next like 8 or 9 movies? Like I don't understand. Okay, sure, you go back to Kang eventually because you've got this, but what are they going to do now? They should do what I suggested and just go to Doctor Doom or the X-Men, one or the other. But I mean, like, I don't know how you move forward. Maybe they don't. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe they don't know what to do.
I think they don't.
I don't know.
Who would you see as a possible replacement for Kang? Any thoughts, gentlemen?
I'll let you go, JD. Because the only guy that really comes to my mind, I don't think would actually work because he was already in the Marvel universe in a different movie and got killed off. But he's one of my favorites, and Michael B. Jordan. I just love him, and I thought he was awesome in Black Panther, and I love him in Creed, and I like him in all the movies that he does. But I just don't know that would work because he was already in one of the other movies.
Yeah, I don't like doing this for, I talked about it on the weeks ago why I didn't think they should recast. Okay, it will be fun. It will be fun. Terrence Howard.
Oh my god, that would be perfect.
Because he was he was the original Rhodey, and then you get like a little meta twist on it of why Kang pissed off at the Marvel universe. I don't think they would do it, a pain in the ass, but that was also 15 years ago, and Terrence Howard isn't what he was 15 years ago.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
I would do Terrence Howard. That's what I would do, but I am also all for the chaos. Marshall Ali would be Marshall Ali.
Yeah.
He's a great
supposed to, he's supposed to be Blade if
Yes.
they ever do anything with Blade.
Yeah.
So, Blade movie that I've been hearing about. Ronnie says Disney's gonna wait till the heat blows over and recast Jonathan Majors as Kang.
No,
I think
that
with
guy's
James
done.
Gunn. I think so too, because he's going to jail.
Yeah.
Like,
especially he's going to jail.
He wasn't just accused; he was convicted, right? Like there is a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, that's real. Like, that's a real problem that he's got. He's problems to deal with. Him not being Kang is far down the list. James Burns says, "Who cares? Kang is a list POS." List POS. I don't know what you mean by list.
A-list piece of
a list. No, I read it as a list, not a list. Okay, sorry. Give me something more low key with a small budget, not written by a fucking committee. I don't disagree with that. I just don't think it's where they are right now, nor where they've ever been really with the Marvel things. Quite frankly, the best MCU villain currently is going to be an Echo, and I'm not going to watch it.
So speaking of James, I forgot. I wanted to announce this at the top of the show. I completely forgot. Look, Damage Inc. In the upcoming issue, we have the honor of being killed by some zombies.
James rendered us beautifully. The most about it is I'm the tall of all of us in my rendition, and for some reason, he drew me wearing one of those. What do you call the hats that don't have like the center?
Just a visor, I think.
Yeah. Visor, thank you. You got me wearing a visor. I don't think I've ever worn a visor in my life, but I could tell it was
with
me.
NWO on it.
With NWO on it, which led me to believe that was me. So I was like, you know what? I'm tall and I have a visor, so I'll take it. So thank you, James. Made me smile.
Yes.
And he also did the dumb mother. He worked in the dumb motherfucker line, which I really appreciated. I got a good laugh on that one.
Ron says Blade is dead in the water. And then the other something that just came up today, we're still working in. I still have to approve it, but it's fine. I know he's not watching. Hope Volume 2, Dirk Manning's Hope Volume 2. We will be quoted on the back cover when that comes out as a hardcover. So.
Oh, cool! Congrats.
Yeah, from the interview that we did with him at Comic-Con this year. So.
Oh,
yeah,
neat. That's pretty cool. And John,
and John starts a ton of shit. Yes, he did, and that was great.
As always.
As always.
Yes. Shit stirrer that John is. Yeah. So, what do we got now in the news?
And then the final article that we have, I don't know if you saw, James Gunn came out and said a bunch of stuff like, this is the stuff that's definitely not true about some of the rumors. This is the stuff that is true. And one of the things he said is, they have no plans to replace Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, that like he would like to move forward with her. And then she came out and said, yeah, no, I'm done with the role.
Yeah. That's pretty tough when one party does not want to be involved, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I get it because, and I think it's better, right? I was thinking about this. I think it's better that she's moved on because like James Gunn has gone out of his way to have this clean divide between, okay, this was pre DC, this is post DCU, right? This is kind of
right.
And her over, I want to do it because she's been one of the best parts of the DCU cast. Mm-hmm. She was the only good thing about the first Suicide Squad. I didn't see the Birds of Prey movie, but I heard she's really good in that. And I liked her in the second Suicide Squad. And here's the thing with her right now. She's really popular and she's like going through her alpha phase. So she can do whatever the hell she wants.
Wait a minute.
She's the number one actress in Hollywood right now. Like Barbie was such a smash hit. She doesn't need it anymore. She can go on to do whatever role that she wants.
Yep.
Wait. Flag on the play.
Flag.
We did Birds of Prey on this podcast.
We did not do Birds of Prey on this. I missed that episode.
Are you? Is this like the Mario movie all over again? You claimed
that I went
that you watched it and did a whole episode on it.
And then I said months later that I never saw the Mario Brothers movie because I had zero. And then I watched it with my kid. I went, "Oh yeah, we did see this." Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen Birds of Prey. I'm honest to God, never saw that movie. I don't think I did that movie. I know my internet's being in trouble. Sorry, man. I don't know what's going on. I got a satellite up in my room, but it's like messing up. If it keeps cutting out, my bad.
Oh, and then Ron says, "DC Universe is trash." We don't know yet. Just
movies.
We got to give it a shot. They're redoing everything. So
everything all the casting stuff with Superman has been really good. So, and I love Superman with all my heart. So I'm gonna give it a chance there.
Yeah. I trust James Gunn until I don't trust him anymore. How's that sound?
Fair. I think that's fair. Like, I think that's all you can say.
Yeah.
He never led us astray. God damn. I don't think I'm on. How did you do that, Randy? How did you come up with that?
I went to our website and searched Birds of Prey, and it came up.
That makes perfect sense. So, I don't think I'm on that episode. I don't think I saw that movie. I honest to God don't think I saw that movie. Because I really don't know why they don't use writers from the animated movies and the live movies. Those stories are great. That's a good question. It's a different world. When you get tabbed as an animated writer, you get kind of shoehorned into that world. Like, oh, he writes for this. Same happens with, it doesn't happen as much, but it used to happen with comic book writers a lot. Like, oh, that guy writes comics. We write movies. That's not as common, but I think with anime still might be a thing. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's okay. I think she can move on. And I think it's probably better for the universe if she does.
It might hit the nail on the head. Like, Barbie was huge. She's got cachet now to do whatever she wants, so she doesn't need to rely on that anymore.
Yeah, she's the biggest star in Hollywood right now.
All right, well, we're going to do a quick commercial break and come back with our main topic, and we have something brand new in our ads. JD, ready for this?
I guess.
This is so wizard, Annie.
Broadcasting very fast and very dangerous from the planet Malistan. You are listening to So Wizard.
You're thinking people gonna die?
The only podcast to make the Kessel run in under 12 parsecs.
There'll be no one to stop us this time.
I am your host, Joey DiCarlo, and with me, my co-hosts, the queen of all nerds, Aubrey Litchfield, and the expert, Mr. Marquis, Marcellus Ray. You are listening to So Wizard Podcast, where three friends review movies, TV, and sometimes more, podcasting weekly on the Geek World All-Stars Podcast Network. Marcellus Reagans, please tell the listeners where they can find more So Wizard Podcasts.
Everybody, you can head on over to SoWizardPodcast.com, and there you're going to find a brand new episode every week. Find So Wizard on all podcasting streaming platforms, such as iTunes, Spotify, Good Pods, and pretty much wherever you can find a podcast. Check out our YouTube page, where new content is being uploaded regularly. We also have a Patreon page. For as little as $1 a month, you can receive exclusive bonus content while you're supporting the show.
No, I didn't. First of all, a podcast takes a lot of work, okay? You have to organize the guests, you have to do a Google Calendar, and then you build a following. It takes a long time, and I've been working on it for a while.
She's right. Yeah. Not for me. I just show up. But these two guys, they do.
So that was Randy created that for So Wizard for their request.
That was cool.
Yeah, and for those who have watched the show and have seen some of those people, actually, you know what? They've never come on since we've done video, except for Joey. But yeah, that is not what Marcellus looks like, and that is not what Aubrey looks like.
I've never seen
the fact
Marcellus look like that.
What was that?
Nothing.
Oh, you've never seen what Marcellus looks like?
No, I never look like. So sorry, my internet's being wonky, so I'm just gonna.
Okay then, but now we're gonna. You got to talk because we're getting into our main topic here. So we're going to be talking about the Iron Claw. Before we get into it, as always, I like to give the numbers. So far, as of the recording of this podcast, box office domestically, because it's only released in the United States, it's made 24 million, 336,000, and Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score is 88%, and the audience is 94%. So
that's great. 24
Yeah.
million sounds really low, but it's an R-rated movie. When you're an R-rated movie in the US, you're guaranteed to make like something like 60-70% less at the box office because you're cutting your audience essentially in half.
But JD didn't only have like a $25 million budget.
15 million.
15. Oh yeah, so that I mean that's a dub right there. And it was a limited release for a while. They just went wide release recently, and it's not exactly the type of movie that's really going to do big box office numbers. I don't think anybody thought that it would. But it's way over. Like they made all their money back and then some. It's a success.
Big time. This is an award film, right? This is something released during award season. Like this is not excuse me. This is not a movie meant to boost the box office. This is a movie that's this is a tragic story about professional wrestling during Christmas time.
Yeah.
Like you're clearly not chasing the fun moviegoers. Like, and I try to tell everybody, people are like, how's this make? Oh, it's really good, but it's really sad. Someone on Christmas goes, should I go take my husband to this movie? Is it sad? I'm like, yeah, really, really sad.
So all right, let's start how we normally start. We like to go around, everyone give their initial impression of the movie without spoilers. I think everyone knows our impressions, but let's do it anyway. And we'll start with Mike.
I loved this movie. I just thought it was absolutely tremendous. And we won't get into the spoilers and like different plot points, but there were some parts of the movie that didn't really reflect the actual story.
Mhm.
So for me as like a hardcore fan that knows that story very well, like I've read books and I've seen all the documentaries and I know that story up and down. I had to go into the movie knowing that it wasn't going to absolutely reflect every detail of reality. I had to go in there without doing, well, actually, this is what happened. So since I was able to do that and kind of like put my wrestling fan brain aside and go in there as just like a fan of good movies, it was a much better experience for me. And I thought it was great. Acting was great. Like the storytelling was great. The way they filmed the movie, I thought was awesome, especially the wrestling scenes. So for any movie that I've ever seen that's been about pro wrestling, I would say the wrestling scenes were probably the best that I've ever seen. I don't know if JD has one better in mind, but I just thought that the way they shot it and filmed it and the way that they made the wrestling arena, the sportatorium look, I just flat out loved it. I just really just thought that this was an A+ movie. Just great.
Cool. JD.
It's the best wrestling movie ever made.
Yeah.
There's not a lot.
Wow.
There's not a whole lot of them. I thought The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke was really overrated, and it was like the movie Rockstar. Like it was just every rock and roll cliche was thrown into that.
Yes.
Like that was The Wrestler was every like pro wrestling cliche story we've ever heard, and like he jumps off the top rope and dies, and it was a little much for me. But
Spoiler.
for spoiler for a 15-year-old movie,
I know.
no, this was great. And I texted Mike when I got out of the theater and I told him I was in tears. Like I literally had tears in my eyes. Again, guys like us know the Von Erich story in real life. And when this came out, when they announced this movie, I remember we were on our show and like, well, we'll see how this goes. And man, they absolutely nailed it. I adore this. I absolutely adore it.
Yeah. I have to agree. This is a great story. Like even if you take the wrestling out of it, it's a well done movie, right? It's a good story. Well, it's a sad story, but it's told well, and it's it's like the filmmaking is really good, and it's not over the top in your face with some of the stuff. Like some of the things are subtle, but like you can pick up on it. And like I didn't know the Von Erich story before I went, and I had Mike, I told JD that like my girlfriend had saw the preview because somebody that she works with was saying, "Oh, Zac Efron looks weird," and showed her the preview for this movie, and she went, I want to go see that, which like shocked me, and not because she's a big Zac Efron fan. She just said it looks really good, and yeah, so we went and saw it. I think a week after JD did, and it was like I was like, yeah, we got to talk about this movie on the podcast. It's so good, and it's a shame because I think people need to go see it. Like it tells a story that not a lot of people know, you know, and I think it's an important like some people can argue this but I think wrestling is a huge part of pop culture. It's been for a long time, and like stories like this behind the scenes stuff isn't known by a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I think that this is, JD calls it the greatest wrestling movie ever made. I don't really see it as being a wrestling movie. I think if you replace wrestling and you just make them be like just four members of a rock band that are like brothers, and the
Yeah.
same story happens, you know what I mean? This is a tragic story about a real life family, right? And wrestling just happened to be part of the backdrop. But I think that if you could have easily replaced wrestling with rock music or wrestling with another genre, and you would have probably had a similar type of movie. And that's why I typically don't recommend wrestling movies to non-wrestling fans, but this is one of those that I'm like, even if you don't like wrestling, like you're really going to like this movie because the pro wrestling isn't really just so in your face. In this movie, like Ready to Rumble back in the day was, and I think The Wrestler is probably like right behind Iron Claw for me anyway, is because I also felt like, again, that could have been a rock and roll movie too, right? It was taking stories from the inside of pro wrestling and what it's like to be an aging rock star or an aging wrestler. So and that's why I really loved this movie too. I just thought they just did a really good job with it.
So I got to do a write-up about this film for the Voices of website, and I posted it on my Facebook page, right? I usually don't do that. I usually don't share my creative stuff with those people,
Those
and
people.
there's only so much nerddom that people can really take, like the people that know me in real life. So like if I'm on Twitter, Nerd Central. If I'm on Facebook, it's like I'm a little bit more selective about what I share. So many people texting me and like responding to that article, like saying, this sounds interesting. Like I try to do my best I could to like sell this movie because I kind of believe in it. Like I was really moved by this story. And again, I know the story. So, and my cousin texts me, he's like, because you should have put spoiler tags. And I'm like, well, it was for, but he was typically anybody on that website knows the. So he's like, well, I had to stop reading. I'll come back after I see the movie. I'm like, that's fair.
Right.
But like, I had a really big response to the article that I wrote. So I'm really happy that we can keep talking about this. I'm excited to dig deeper.
Well, speaking of spoilers, we're gonna probably get into some spoilers now. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can stop watching or listening now. Go see the movie and come back and listen. Or if you don't care,
get the fuck out.
If you don't care about spoilers or you've already seen it, all right, here we go.
Yeah. Guys, spoiler, everybody fucking dies.
Here's a real spoiler.
Not all
Dave,
of them.
Except for Kevin.
Dave, I got a great one for you. I bet you didn't know. In real life, there was another brother that died.
Yes.
Oh wait, hold on. I wanted to say that too. My girlfriend, I was about to say wife. My girlfriend was so
careful there.
Enamored by this movie that like she did a bunch of research and started telling me things, and she was like, yeah, the other brother who they didn't put him in the movie because they said it was just too much. Like he was originally written into the script.
Redundant.
Yeah. I think the crazy part of the story is the real life story is actually too depressing for a movie, right? When a lot of times with these movies that are based on a true story, they have to Hollywood them up and make them even more sad or make them even more, grandiose and these things. They had to temper this story down because not only did they miss Chris Von Erich, they didn't put him in the movie, but there was like two very famous wrestlers that were attached to that promotion that also died in crazy fashion that they could have added to the movie. Not only that, they didn't even get to the story about how Fritz died, right? Because it would have been a 4-hour movie if they did that.
They also didn't talk about Kerry Von Erich, major drug arrest going over to Japan when he went over there. They didn't talk. I mean, like, there's so much. Mike's referring to, of course, Gino Hernandez and Bruiser Brody. to
Yeah.
Gino Hernandez might have been a mob killing, maybe. And Bruiser Brody was actually murdered in the shower by the Booker of Puerto Rico when he was over there.
Yeah. Jose Gonzalez, the invader.
Jose Gonzalez,
And
the
then
invader, yeah.
okay, so Mike was the
They were a
youngest in the
tag
movie.
movie. I just realized that, Mike. I didn't even think about why they put Gino. I don't think Gino and Brody ever tagged, but it kind of makes
No.
sense putting those two there when you say like that. Oh wow, that just blew
Because
my
they
mind.
also died. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they also
So
died. Yes.
Mike was not the youngest. It was Chris was the youngest. Chris was the youngest. He had committed suicide.
Well, Chris was the wait. Chris was. See, I'm trying to remember their names. He was the,
okay.
So Jackie is the first one. He's the one who died at 6 when he touched he got electrocuted in a trailer park and then drowned in a puddle of snow. He was the oldest Von Erich. Kevin is the second brother who becomes basically the de facto older brother. He is the surviving Von Erich. He's the one who makes it out. David was the next brother. David Von Erich was the guy who everyone tagged that should have been the NWA world champion. He died of acute enteritis. It was a very nasty intestinal infection.
Right.
That was
And
well, it was
go ahead,
probably
JD.
It's probably exacerbated by heavy drug use. But there
Right,
is
but
the apocryphal story told by Bruiser Brody that he overdosed in Japan. I am of the mind, again, JD, the non-conspiracy, I'm of the mind that he died of the acute Dave just threw that up and it threw me. He died of the infection, and it probably made it a lot worse because he didn't take time off and he was taking a lot of drugs. Kerry is the next brother. Kerry is the most successful. If you watch wrestling, he was the Texas Tornado in WWF. He was fired and they didn't even get his movie. Kerry was going to go to prison, right? And he couldn't do it. So Kerry killed himself at 33. Young then Eric, Mike was the fifth brother. Mike was never in no place. Yeah, and the youngest brother. Mike had in the wrestling business. He kind of got shoehorned in there after David died. He really wanted to be. Mike was a cameraman with the company before. He had to be there. And then, he wanted to play music, and then he was kind of pushed into it. Mike broke his arm doing a drop kick, a rudimentary wrestling move, got surgery on the shoulder, and caught toxic shock syndrome and was in a coma for a couple weeks, came out of it. And because he had a fever, I believe is what it was, basically cooked his brain, and he just never was the same, and he killed him. And then there was a baby brother named Chris who had really bad asthma. So he was on a steroid that for his asthma that kind of stunted his growth. So he was significantly smaller than the rest of his brothers. He had kind of brittle bones, and he just kept getting hurt. And just figured he would never get to be what his brother Kerry was, because he idolized Kerry, and he killed himself. He shot himself.
In the movie, right? He takes a bunch of pills, and they show him just wander off into the forest, and then that's it. My girlfriend just told me tonight before we got on here.
The scuba story?
He put himself in a sleeping bag with a bunch of rocks and threw himself off a boat.
Yeah.
After taking a bunch of pills. Oh my God.
Yeah, he also left a suicide letter addressed to his brother Chris saying, "Hey man, I left you something in my scuba gear." And it was a handful of pills with an instruction on how to kill himself someday.
Yeah, dude, the story is so much darker than they even put into the movie. And I'm pretty glad that they didn't go as dark as they did, because I don't know that I would have actually recovered because I knew the story.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other thing I was going to say? The thing that got me. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. The movie starts out when the father's a wrestler, and the head of he bought a car, and like that was a good scene because they're showing him like wants to be successful, like no matter what it takes. That's like he's driving, so they can't afford a car, but he's got to buy an expensive car to make look like he's more successful than he is to attract people. And then one of the greatest scenes, and it's funny because I've known people like this. Thank God I didn't have anyone in my family like this. The scene where they're all playing football is such a great scene because it shows him pitting his sons against each other to get his approval and praise. And
Yeah.
like there was a dynamic in that family where like that's what they were doing, and that's why it was so tough for them.
Yeah, I mean, Fritz is a very complicated person, right? He becomes very successful. He buys the Texas territory. One thing I'll say about the movies, I don't think the movie does real justice to just how famous the Von Erichs were.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you get a scope, like, because before Hulk Hogan was like the biggest wrestling star in the world, that was kind of the Von Erich brothers. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
going to say this going to sound silly. These were humongous in the Middle East, like legitimately. They were getting world class champion videos in Israel, and they were doing tours. Like Mike Von Erich's injury doesn't happen in the area. Mike Von Erich got hurt in Tel Aviv. Like, they
Yeah.
were massive, massive stars. And like, you don't quite get here's the thing about Fritz too. We always joke about the Observer's most disgusting promotional tactic. Like, he used that to like sell shows, right? Like, in the real, like we talked about Gino Hernandez. Gino Hernandez was mob style murdered probably, and like they have Bill Mercer on the show. Like, Mike, we have Terrible Tragedy with Mike with the death of Gino Hernandez, and Chris Adams was blinded by him. Like, they were so shameless in how they would work in these god awful tragic things into their shows. It was just, Fritz was he's a fucking madman.
Yeah, Fritz, super complicated guy. I really thought that Holt McElhenney did a great job capturing him. You know, really an amazing job. And you could tell that he loved his kids very much. And he did the best he could raising them. I just don't think that he knew what to do with all those boys. And he was having a trouble being both a promoter and a dad, being a pro wrestler, which is this, kind of a bullshit world that they're in. They're constantly like, trying to work everybody and fool everybody and make them think that reality is not reality and all this stuff. And so he's got this pro wrestling territory, and he's got all these kids, and he's getting them to fight for his attention and fight for his love. I thought that one of the best scenes in the movie, which Kevin Von Erich in one of the old documentaries said that was real, was when they're at the breakfast table and he's ranking his sons up against each other. And he said that, he goes, Carrie's my favorite, David's number 2, Kevin's number 3, and Mike, you're last, but that could change at any moment, right? Like that was a real story. So you kind of wonder, like, it's no wonder like these kids were so jacked up, and no wonder they were constantly like overdoing it to try to get their dad's affection. No wonder David, like, instead of taking time off, he just decided to take pills through it, went to Japan anyway, and ended up blowing up his guts, right? Like, no wonder all that stuff happened.
I don't think that's fair to blame that necessarily on Fritz, because you and I both know.
No,
was
no, I'm not.
You know?
It is. They were just a part of the business. It was a big time rock star lifestyle, and JD hit the nail on the head. And I wasn't trying to blame everything on him, and he does deserve some blame, right? Especially as you get like later, whenever he has some knowledge of that what he's doing is wrong, like he still continues to do the same things, right? Like that's when I start to blame people. But they absolutely were living the rock star lifestyle. David, I don't think anybody just understands just how big the Von Erichs were, especially in Texas. Dave Meltzer, who was covering them at the time, he actually worked for Wichita Falls, a newspaper there. He said that when David Von Erich died, it was like it was a bigger story in Dallas, Texas than when Elvis had died just a few years prior to that. Like that's how big the Von Erichs were. They're so big in the Middle East that right now, Kevin and his 2 sons, Marshall and Ross, they're over there in Israel right now doing some charity work, right? Because they're still big over there. They still talk about the Von Erichs over there. You can't go into Texas right now, even though it's been, 40 years past when they were in their prime. You can't go into Texas right now. And if you mention the Von Erichs, probably somebody about mine and JD's age, they're going to know exactly what you're talking about. And their kids are probably going to know a little bit about them because their parents are talking about them. So that's how huge they were. And so they had everything at their disposal. And that was really probably the biggest failure of the movie, was that they just didn't capture that was it's not all just Fritz's fault. These boys were put into this pro wrestling business. 3 of them really wanted to be in it. Mike did not. But once they were in it, they were living the lifestyle that pro wrestlers lived. The Von Erichs, those 5 boys dying the way that they did, that was just a microcosm of what was happening in pro wrestling at the time. Because, we talked about Gino Hernandez. He died, it could have been a mob style hit. It looked like it was probably a cocaine overdose, right? You've had so many people dying of painkiller overdoses. We're talking like hundreds, probably like 1 to 200 between 1985 and 2005 died of whether it was like a heart issue from steroids or a heart issue from muscle relaxers, painkiller overdoses, suicides, all those types of things were happening, and cocaine overdoses, drinking themselves to death. Like that's just what pro wrestling was. It just caught that family by storm because they were just so freaking popular in the early 80s, and they could get whatever they wanted.
See, I think that too is part of the problem with that is it's an A24 film. And A24, they don't make, I don't want to say they make cheap films, but they're known for like really squeezing the budgets. And they just aren't like when they have, I was talking to our buddy Garrett about this. They were disappointed that when you see Carrie winning the NWA title, you just see Doris in the room watching with David's ghost basically behind her, watching the TV feed. In real life, that stadium was packed and Doris was there. And that was the big emotional moment, was when Carrie hugs both his parents. And I was trying to tell Garrett, I'm like, yeah, they just couldn't. I get why you didn't like it, but they just didn't have the budget to be able to recreate that. Recreating the dank ass sportatorium is one thing. Filling Texas Stadium for a $15 million budget film, that just isn't going to happen. Right. It just, that was an impossibility. It was impossible for them to capture how grandiose the Von Erich family truly was. But I think they did do a great job boiling the film down to what it was. Like, I just couldn't get over how beautiful the film was shot. Like it says these golden hues that really bathe the Texas landscape, especially the shots from and stuff like that. It's just, man, that stuff just blew me away.
Yeah.
Right. And I get what you guys are saying about not showing how big they really were. But I also kind of feel like they were trying to tell the story of the family. And I don't feel like maybe they were afraid that would take away from it a little bit.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And we also have to remember that A24, I think they very much made this film for the Academy.
Oh yeah.
Like they were trying to make this for the Oscars. They were not making this film for wrestling fans, despite the fact that they did throw in some Easter eggs for guys like us, like hardcore wrestling fans. And that's why whenever some of our colleagues went and watched it, they didn't like it, is because of that fact, the stadium show scene and the different ways that people died and how that didn't really reflect the actual true story, leaving Chris out. Like, people did have problems with that, but because I knew what they were trying to go for, I just didn't have that big of a problem with it.
Same. None of that stuff bothered me, but it's something I think that could be addressed. The one thing that did bother me was the guy that got to play Ric Flair. What the fuck?
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, that was I honestly, I haven't done acting since I was 17, and I could have done a better job playing Ric Flair. Like, I think I could have done way better than that guy. He just, his body didn't look right, his face didn't look right, and then the mannerisms he didn't have down. It was just a cheap, horrible imitation of Flair.
So it's Aaron Dean Eisenberg is the actor who played Ric Flair. And here's the thing. I've been thinking about this a lot because it bothered me as well. And everyone's got a Ric Flair impersonation in their pocket, right? Everyone goes woo and does that, who grew up in that time period, who knows wrestling. But I kind of feel like if someone did an impersonation like that, it would have felt cheap as well. Like, it felt like he was trying to make it his own, and it just didn't come off as.
He definitely was trying to make it his own, but he's dressed like Ric Flair. He's trying. He is Rick. If it had been like, if
his name's Ric Flair.
Yeah,
right.
If they had called him Dan Davis, which wrestling fans, if they'd have been different, he could have have an amalgamation character, but it wasn't. It's Ric Flair, like woo, woo. That's how Ric Flair woos, and the guy goes woo like that. It's like that's not the Flair woo. Like, that's not how it's supposed to be. Like, and it felt to me like the guy didn't do the research, because Ric Flair has this cadence to how he talks, right?
Yes,
and like Will Ferrell did it better in Eastbound and Down than than this guy. And it's just disappointing. The guy who played Harley Race wasn't quite right.
I thought he
either,
did good.
He was fine.
You know what? I thought he very much looked the part, and I thought he had Harley Race's cadence down. He looked at, and I thought he had his cadence down. You know, I mean, like you can't.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, but so with the voice, I forgive the voice because that is not everybody is a voice actor, right?
No.
Like, you know, a lot of comedians can do that. Like, I thought he had everything else down, so I thought I gave him a thumbs up.
I was fine. I was fine with the guy who played Harley.
Kevin Anton.
Yeah, he was fine. The flare was bad. I was just like, man, I just wish they come to use. I almost, because they did use some archival footage in the film. I almost wish they would use some flare archival footage or a goddamn AI voice at this point. Like, it took me out of the movie, to be honest with you, because it's Flair. He's still I'm just going to bother some of my wrestling when I say this, but he's still a cultural icon.
Yeah.
I didn't even grow up loving wrestling like you guys, and even I was like, "That's not Ric Flair." Yeah,
Anybody with a YouTube account has seen some Ric Flair promos just because they just get shared everywhere. Because it got really big within sports community and hip hop community, and so the only other thing that really bothered me about the movie was, and this is something that it didn't bother me early on in the movie, but as it went along, and one scene in particular was just how small Jeremy Allen White was in comparison to how big Kerry Von Erich actually is. We talked about the Liver King earlier, David. That's Kerry Von Erich. They're not that far off from this. Like Kerry Von Erich, like 6'3", like 270 pounds, chiseled for granite. He looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Yeah. Jeremy Allen White's like 5'6", 160 pounds with a little bit of Decadurabalin in his butt cheeks, right? Like, and so there was the one scene where he's coming back after winning the Intercontinental title, and he gives Fritz the 6-shooter, right, for Christmas, that was actually a true story. He comes in with this girl who is like 4 inches taller than him, and she's probably 5'9", and then he's wearing this belt. He just looks like one of the fans at the arena playing wrestler, like that. Like he really does. And so he looked like a Kerry Von Erich action figure versus Kerry Von Erich. So like honestly, Zac Efron, if they would have just swapped roles, Zac Efron probably would have made a very great Kerry Von Erich, but he was the star of the movie. And the story is about, it's not so much about, it's about Kevin. It's not so much about all the guys dying. It's about how Kevin survived it and how Kevin moved on and took care of his family and how he's living his life now. Right. And so, and Zach's the big star, so he had to be the Kevin, but he was so jacked, he could have played Kerry.
Yeah. And I thought about that too. It's like, Kevin looks like Kerry and Kerry looks like Kevin. Like, because Kevin had a leaner build. Like Kerry always had like a lean build. The guy who played David, I thought looked like David. Like I thought that was pretty spot on. Yeah, I think he was, and Mike too. The guy who played Mike was. You know what was interesting, Mike, is when they do, because in the movie they do a press conference with Kevin and Mike after Mike comes out of the coma, and it feels weird in the movie, and all I can think is even weirder in real life. Like when you see the real.
I thought they nailed that scene. I really thought they nailed that scene. They did. But honestly, the real life press conference, I don't know, Dave, if you had a chance to check it out.
No,
it's even creepier than what happened in the movie. Dude, this brother, Mike, like I honestly, and he wrestled for 2 more years, believe it or not. People don't know that. Like he actually stuck around after that. Like it's like watching a dead person talk. Legitimately, it's the creepiest thing you've ever seen in your life.
His eyes are full of blood. Legitimately, there's blood in his eyes, and like he looks dead. And the actor, I can't remember his name, is acting dead. Watching the real Mike Von Erich risen from the grave is one of the creepiest things.
They
tried. They did it.
Simons.
Yeah, he's really good. He's really good as Mike Von Erich. He really did a great job portraying the distant post-mortem Mike, basically. But I mean, like. In real life, when you see it from Mike Von Erich, it's like 1,000 times scarier. It's one of those things like, man, life can't, like sometimes art doesn't quite imitate life just well enough, but it's a great scene.
Yeah.
I think you guys are pointing to something that my girlfriend said, and I kind of agree too, that they didn't do a great, at times they did, but not really. They didn't do a great job of letting you understand how much time was actually passing in the movie.
Yeah.
Right. Because it feels like he comes out of the hospital and then he kills himself, right? Like you get
Yeah.
no sense of him wrestling for 2 more years and trying.
Right.
They do. They truncate the timeline a lot. Like the thing with Kerry losing his foot, that did happen, but that was 2 years. That was a year after. No, 2 years after he lost the title. Like I get why they moved it up because it does make for a better story. In real life, Kerry goes to Japan and loses the title to Rick back to Rick like 10 days later. So I mean, it didn't have a very long reign with it. And he did lose his they don't do this in the movie, but in real life, what happened? This is thing. Kerry loses the foot, but the doctors were able to reconstruct it, and he's in the hospital. Right. So they rebuilt Kerry's foot. And he's so fucked up on that when he's in his hospital, someone left a burger into his room and he stood up to walk over to get the burger and he crushed his brand new foot and they had to amputate it after that.
Oh my God.
And then he ends up wrestling for years after that with a prosthetic foot. And he's always like pilled out of his mind, but he was still pretty successful after that with a prosthetic foot. And honestly, nobody knew about the foot until like years later. Like there was a rumor, but he constantly kept his boot on. Like even like before the matches and after the matches, he would go shower and he would leave his boots on because he did not want anybody to see that he had a prosthetic foot. He didn't want anybody knowing about that thing. It was the craziest thing.
I didn't know he had a prosthetic foot till the mid to late 2000s, to be honest with you. Like I had no idea.
It's funny. I'll say that too. The A24 is an art house, independent art house film. And I will say that's the scene that made me really feel like this is an art house movie. Other than that, everything was great. Is after he gets back from Japan, won the title, goes that motorcycle ride scene is such an art house scene where it's just the headlight on the road going for 10 minutes. You see a car and then his face, and then he wakes up and he's missing the foot. It was like
low budget, but that happened. That was real. That whole thing actually did happen. So I mean, like
not the day he got back from winning though.
No. It was a couple years later.
Yeah,
because as JD said, he won the title from Flair in Texas, I think in May at the stadium show. The up into that, like they had the attendance record and the gate record at that point, I believe, and which I think WWF broke it a couple years later in Detroit, but but he ends up losing it back, dropping it right back to Flair. Like he was never supposed to win that title. They gave it to him because his brother had died, and this was such a big show. So Flair came in, in what wrestling terms they call put him over or did the honors or did the favors. It basically means he lost. He went ahead and lost the title to him. But Kerry was just always so fucked up he couldn't be trusted that they had to make him drop the title right back. And plus, Flair was the biggest star outside of Hulk Hogan in the world at that time. And so there was nobody else that could be the champion because he had to go to all these little territories and go in and increase their gates and increase their television ratings and make everybody believe that the local hero could actually beat Ric Flair. And then in the end, Flair would always either win by cheating or he'd lose by disqualification to keep his title, things like that. Like Flair had to be the champion.
Because you couldn't. The Texas territory needed the Von Erichs to survive, especially at that point. You couldn't do wrestling is different than it is now because we think of wrestling with like WWE or AEW where you have these like the shows that travel around the country. It wasn't like that in the 80s. This was the era it changed. Like in the 80s and before that, every territory we call them territories, right? But every had their own wrestling promotion. Fritz Von Erich was the promoter of North Texas. Right. So he ran shows from the Dallas-Fort Worth area south, and eventually he bought into San Antonio. And Texas itself had like 4 or 5 different territories. So like everywhere, like Dave, you're from Philadelphia. You would have lived in the old WWF territory. I'm from Chicago. I would have lived in the AWA/WWA, Vern Guy and Dick the Bruiser territory. Mike is originally from Missouri. He would have lived in like Bob Geigel's. Sorry,
when I was a kid, California. I lived in Missouri for 4 years when I was a teenager, though.
Were you okay? So we're getting technical. Were you living in the territory or the LaBelle territory, sir?
You know what? I don't know what. California? I was in Central California, but they used to come up to Bakersfield, so it would have been LaBelle territory because I was closest to Bakersfield. But the Roy Shire would come down to Fresno. and I was like right in between, so I could have made the Fresno shows too.
So yeah, and again, and same with me, because I'm from Chicago was divided. Half of it was for Vern Gagne and the AWA. The other half was Dick the Bruiser and the WWA. But that's how it was. Like every TV market, Memphis famously, everyone had their own. And then WWE started doing but they had a traveling champion. The NWA World Champion would go to all these different territories, right? And you had to believe that the local hero could beat the world champion. And that's why Ric Flair is depending on who you believe, anywhere between the 16 and the 23-time world heavyweight champion, right? Because he lost frequently, you know, and would get the belt back.
He would go in and he would lose it to the local hero, and then they would go overseas and drop it right back to him, and that way the local hero, like they wouldn't see him actually get his ass beat. So
yeah, they just said Bill Murray that Kerry Von Erich was cheated by Ric Flair out of the title. So yeah, terrible Bill Mercer impression. So Dave, I don't want to use the term civilian because there's an actual military guy in the show, but as a non-wrestling fan, like for Mike cannot talk about, we can't real stuff, right? With this movie, we're incapable of just looking at this as a movie. For someone who just saw the movie, like what were your thoughts on it? Dave, hello.
No. Okay, so I mean, like I said, it's a good movie. It's not. I don't look at this as a wrestling movie. Like I look at it as a movie of the Von Erich family, and wrestling was just the background of it. Like you guys said, it could have been a movie about a band. It could have been a movie about 4 military friends, that banded together and had tragedy happen to them. I thought it was interesting. They kept trying to use this theme of the Von Erich curse throughout the movie. They really played hard into that, I think, at times. Without putting it in your face. What?
I think they actually believe it, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure. But they also didn't it wasn't like the Von Erich curse, and the whole movie was based around that, and they made it like a spooky thing. They just kind of put it in there like they believed it, right? Like you said. But yeah, no, it was good. It was interesting to see, like I said, the behind the scenes stuff that like no one gets to normally see or they don't talk about, right? Because how do I say this without offending you two? Because
you can't offend us.
Mike, Mike the guest, and JD's my friend. Everyone, and I hate.
Are you trying to tell us that wrestling is fake, sir? Because we're aware. We all know shit. We all know.
I hate using the word fake though, because it does require athleticism. You have to be able to take hits and to do this and whatnot.
We're aware. We know. We've been letting this secret for a long time.
Yeah.
And but yet on the show, when you're watching it, when you're at the arena or you're watching it on TV, they have to keep up this guise that this is all real. This is like they really have these beefs. They're really having these fights, and like it was cool to watch the one scene where they're all backstage and they're talking about, I'll do this move, you do this move, do. Like I'm sure that there's a little more to it in real life to how they plan this out. And I'm sure it's not a 5-minute conversation before. Really?
Well, back in the day, that's what it was. Now it's like they tell everyone exactly what they're going to do, almost move for move, and it's almost rehearsed in a lot of cases. But back then, it'd be like, okay, you do this, I do this, da 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 da, and a lot of times they would quote unquote call it in the ring, where the heel's job was the bad guy was to like they would go out there, they would feel the crowd, and they would just do the match in the ring. Like we call it working, right? Where like you just wrestle basically. And then like the veteran has an idea of how to feel the crowd out and how to when to build to a climax and when to bring them down. Now it's much more programmed. But I mean, like if you listen to Mike and I's show or any show like Mike and I's, we don't talk about, well, this happened in wrestling and this is what's going on in the storylines. Yeah. This is all we talk about is what goes on backstage. Like, most wrestling fans are far more interested in the machinations behind the scenes than they are of what's going on in the ring. I don't think I'm crazy when I say that, Mike. Am I right?
No. So the weird thing about pro wrestling is it's very much like sometimes like to relate it to movies because they're very much like producing like they have actual agents and producers like
Right.
putting matches together, and like they have writers, like especially in WWE they have like Hollywood writers writing scripts, like full-blown scripts for like how a feud and a rivalry is going to start and climax and end. They have writers writing out their exactly what they're going to say in their promos and things like that. There's other smaller promotions that don't have, it's not as Hollywoodized. They kind of make things up on the fly a lot more. But with pro wrestling, it's super interesting because what we do, it's like covering a sport at times because we cover injuries, we cover contract talks, we cover like free agency, we cover stuff like that. But then we cover it like it would be like covering the theater, and then you know what I mean, because it very much is a play. It's very much a theater like. And then we also cover it kind of like the comic book business or kind of like the movie business as well, which is why JD is so fluid between the two genres. He can kind of go back and forth because there really are a lot of similarities between the two.
The thing that struck me is afterwards, my girlfriend turned to me and said, okay, like it's all fake, but like I didn't understand why like Erich still wanted the title or why like any of them are thing. And I'm like, but it's kind of like being a rock star, right? And the idea is you're trying to win over the crowd, right? Like a band who performs in front of a crowd, even if they're most musically gifted people in the world, if they have no presence and they can't get the audience involved with what they're doing, like no one cares and no one's going to promote them and build them up. It's the same kind of thing. Like they're working a crowd, and the guys who can do it the best get moved up, right? Because it gets them ratings, it makes money for everyone, and that's how it works. But like, she couldn't understand like why someone would want a fake title, and I'm like, it's not really fake in that sense.
Well, so I would explain it to her like this. It would be like Zac Efron winning the Oscar, right?
Yeah.
Like that's going to be like being the NWA champion in the 80s would be like winning an Academy Award, right? Or if you're a rock star, winning a Grammy. What rock stars and what actors want most is probably the most money. Sometimes, but in pro wrestling, to get the most money back in those days, you had to be a drawing champion, or there were some guys that didn't really need the title. There was like, Bruiser Brody and Andre the Giant that didn't really, and Roddy Piper, they were just real famous guys that can make a lot of money. But those are like, your action stars, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger is never going to win an Oscar, but he probably would make the most money in the 80s. It's kind of a similar thing, but Ric Flair was like your Academy Award winner, right?
Yeah.
He was the guy.
So there's a great conversation in the movie about the subject when it's the first date between Pam and Kevin. And she kind of asks the same thing, like they handled this very deftly, and I was really impressed with how this was very tactful, especially when it regards to kayfabe, is the term that we use, is the veneer of professional wrestling. It's called kayfabe. So he explains it just like a job. When I win a title, it's like a job promotion,
right?
When you're moving on up through the job, and like having a title is recognition of a job well done. Like you are doing good, you are someone who is helping us. Here is a title belt, right? And there are guys that don't. And I think it's too, if you lose all the time, you will never get over.
Yeah.
Right? The crowd thinks you're a loser. So that's why guys would be like, nope, not in the back in the day. You don't see it quite as much anymore. Back in the day, guys would be like, nope, no, not doing the job, not putting them, not doesn't work for me, brother, as the phrase goes.
Right. And it's a little bit different, and it can be more complex within pro wrestling because Zac Efron wins the Oscar, Kevin Von Erich, in the movie does not, right? so but Kevin Von Erich and Kevin Atkinson, they're one and the same. Like, Kevin Atkinson is playing Kevin Von Erich, but he's playing that, like, that's his character 24/7. And so he has to play that character, and he has to get that character to be so popular that the promoters will want him to have that title. And then that's how he can make the most money. Right. And that's how he gets his job promotion. So, that's where wrestling is it's much different than Hollywood. Like there's a lot of similarities, but it's much different because Hollywood actors go play different characters in different roles.
Yeah.
In pro wrestling, a lot of times, the character that you're playing at like 19 or 20, you're probably going to have that same
it's
name
you.
when you're 67. Right now, there's going to be evolutions to that character. You're going to go from a good guy, a hero to a villain, or in pro wrestling vernacular, babyface to a heel. Or you're going to go back and forth. You're going to have different character arcs. But ultimately, like, Sting, right? The pro wrestler Sting, he wears the crow makeup and all this and that. He's been called Sting since 1985 when he came out. Even earlier, right? Yeah, when he came out of Power Team USA, right? He was Sting, and he had like a little bit of face makeup here and there, and then he loses a little bit of weight, and he gets the blonde crew cut. And then he has like full blown patriotic makeup, and they call him Surfer Sting. And then all of a sudden, like, Hulk Hogan, starts the NWO, and all the fans and everybody's thinking Sting's going to be a bad guy and join him. He feels like everybody turned against him. So now he paints his face white and does white squigglies like the movie Crow, the Brandon Lee character.
Yeah.
And then it just continues to evolve over time. But he's Sting, right? Steve Borden is Sting. Sting and Steve Borden, they're one and the same. So when Sting wins the World Heavyweight Championship, so does Steve Borden, right? That's the big difference between the two.
It's weird. It's weird because, like, it's very hard for the pro wrestlers, they say, to turn off their characters sometimes. And you hear a lot of stories about how Richard Fleer is gone. It's been Ric Flair since 1975, right?
Yeah.
And that guy, that whoever Richard Fleer was, that guy's gone. Like Ric Flair, like, he is the character now. Izzy McClure says, I'm always tell you to watch wrestling isn't for them because it's fake. Then I tell them how much they like Game of Thrones. It's also like, yeah, I do that all the time too. Like, people are like, it's fake, right? Like, no, I did not know that. Thank you for telling me. Like, and that's why we like it, is because wrestling is cool. It's like, it's a mixture of like a drama and it's athletics, all that mixed into one. And then if you get to the level like Mike and I are on, then you get the backstage stuff. You talk about the business things. Like, we're definitely acolytes of Dave Meltzer and that whole world, like the SMARC world, as they call it. So, I mean, we appreciate wrestling on multiple levels. I write about it all the time.
Who was the you guys are going to know this off the top of your head. And I know when it happened. Like, I remember seeing it when it happened, but I can't remember the wrestler and the reporter that was involved. But one reporter was asking about being fake, and the guy like hit him, and it's like, does that feel fake?
That would be John Stossel of 2020 and Dr. D, David Schultz.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So in the 80s, it's not like this anymore, but in the 80s and beyond and before that, pro wrestlers were taught to make it feel real at all times, despite how hokey the shit that they were doing in the ring was. If anybody said that it was fake, or if they challenged that, like, you almost had to be a tough guy and you had to portray a tough guy.
You had to fight him. You had to fight someone.
You had to get into fights and bars and things like that, and then you had to win. If you lost, promoter would kick you out of the territory. You have to go up the road and go to a different territory because the locals wouldn't believe that you're a tough guy, right? So when that reporter did that to Dr. D, like, nobody was surprised that Schultz hit him. Because that's just what they did back then. Now, this just happened to be in Vince McMahon's territory in New York, and they were going mainstream at the time, and it became a huge story. But that incident happened with magazine writers and newspaper writers and fans, and there's a famous story where Dory Funk Sr. of Amarillo, Texas, was at a restaurant with his young son Terry Funk, who ended up becoming probably one of the greatest pro wrestlers that ever lived. And somebody came into the restaurant and told Dory Funk that it was fake, and he beat the ever-loving shit out of him and put him in a hospital. And he did it right in front of everybody, in front of his sons. And he was so famous and popular in that town, the cops didn't arrest him. They didn't do nothing because that was Dory Funk. He ran the area, right? And so that's just the way that it was. But pro wrestlers nowadays, they very much like being celebrities. Like, that part is important to them. They like crossover, like John Cena, like The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Dave Bautista. Steve Austin did a bunch of movies. Like, they like that. So a lot of these folks, they, Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné, she's in The Mandalorian, right? So they like telling people that, hey, we're athletic actors. We like to do stunt work, but we can do drama, we can do comedy, we can do action, we can do whatever you need us to do. And we would love to leave this business and stop putting our bodies on the line and go do what you guys do and make a lot more money.
And that's
The Rock will do it, whatever, as long as he's in a jungle.
Yeah.
But he's coming back too, so he's back actually. So it's funny you say that. No, and that's the thing too is wrestlers also like talking about, like you see guys like Kenny Omega and Bret Hart before him will talk about the art of pro wrestling, and they talk about how what they do is artistic and it's their expression and like how they tell stories and stuff like that. So I mean, back in the day, choreograph may be a better word to use. Like, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
They're choreographed. Like choreograph is a perfect term for it. Like they talk about why they do what they do or how they do it. Like it's no different than what we do here on this show. It's no different than like when you talk to, or like when we interview a coach, hey, why'd you run that play on 3rd and 2? And I'll explain why you did. It's the same. Pro wrestling is this weird amalgamation of fiction and sports, and like there's nothing like wrestling.
Yeah,
it's Cuisinart. It's something. Yeah, I don't know.
All right. We could really have gotten off the topic of this movie, though.
But I think it's important. But I think that's a big part of it because like the Von Erichs were in the dying days of kayfabe, right? And those boys grew up thinking what their dad did was real. They didn't get. Here's the truth. They didn't get. We call this smarten up, learning the truth. They didn't learn the truth until they started working themselves. Right. Those guys, these wrestlers from back in the day, lied to their kids. They lied to their families. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them made them think what they do was real, right? So that you respect it. Respect for the business was important, right? So a lot of this is the problem with Fritz is he had to put on this veneer of Eric family was. And it winds up because he didn't want anyone to know that his kids were junkies. He didn't want anyone to know that he was kind of a shitty father. Like, and the part of that was protecting the kayfabe, the same way you protect the business. It's all the same. It's this inability to let people in that forces, especially in that era, because you're lying constantly 24/7, right? And the only time you have to let go is when you're chemically altered, right? It's the only time you have to kind of let loose. And that's a big reason why a lot of these guys are dead, right? And I think we don't talk about this enough, but I think it's a reason why things have changed for that generation in particular. Drugs has always been a big problem in wrestling, but I mean, like this necessity to keep this kayfabe alive is hard, right? And like that's gone.
Yeah.
And I think that and the changes to the culture have helped. Like, do we joke about AJ Styles looking phenomenal at 47? Like these dudes at 47 back in the 80s would look like old men. Right. And it's the hard lives that they lived. It was eating them up and spitting them out. So I mean that's all part of the world that is the Iron Claw.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. I think we both have said this, JD. Zac Efron is amazing in this movie, right?
Oh, he's great. He should be nominated for an Oscar.
I was about to say, do you think this movie and or at least some of the cast will get nominated?
I think the movie, I think Zach and probably Holton McCallany for Fritz. I think that would be my guess. Yeah.
I could see those. I could see Jeremy Allen White. I think he's excellent playing Carrie. Like he's not quite, he makes Carrie his own. And I think he's very in a supporting role. I think Jeremy Allen White is really good. I think Zac Efron, I think it's the performance of his career, quite frankly.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead.
Honestly, I hope it's nominated for an Oscar because I think it deserves it.
Okay, now I'm going to ask us something, or I'm going to point something out, and it's something that it's kind of stuff we avoid talking about on this show. But given the new rules for the Oscars for the best movie, does this movie even qualify?
It might not, because not enough minority candidates or LGBTQ. People
in the cast,
right? Yeah, because this was very much a movie about a white family in the 80s.
This movie is a very white movie. Yeah,
it's a very white movie. I didn't think about that till you just said that. And
that would be unfair because it's a great movie. But
with 10 films to be nominated, I hope that consider it. Now, honest to God, I hope Godzilla won't get. There's talk of Godzilla getting nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, and I hope it does because I think it is.
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll get the main Oscar nom, but I think it'll get foreign language nomination. There's a lot that came out this year that is very. I think Barbie will get nominated too. To be frank, like I don't think I'm talking out of school when I say.
Yeah, you be JD. Don't be Frank.
Boo. I think Barbie gets nominated, so I think that's going to check a lot of boxes, and I hope that You get 10 nominations, and it's not been a phenomenal year for movies, quite frankly.
No,
So
it hasn't.
I think it'll get nominated. And I think because it's a small movie, it'll get kind of like people like that movie got nominated. It'll be that movie. It won't win, but it'll catch a nomination.
And maybe, I know the cast wasn't very diverse, but maybe the people making the movie was diverse enough to get them to check all those boxes to be able to get nominated.
Hope so.
Kassan doesn't think anyone cares about the Oscars anymore. I think some people still do.
I think people care. I don't think it's as big as it was, but I think
the industry still cares because they still use that. Yeah, I mean, because if you're an actor, you care because if you win an Oscar, you can ask for more money.
Yeah.
So yeah,
producers care. They wouldn't spend the money that they do. A24 wouldn't exist because, like I said, they made $25 million on a $15 million movie. Like, you're making money, but it's not like big money, right? And but what fuels them is Oscar season. So yeah.
And this is when I was a kid, if something had Oscar nominated on the title at the video store, like I would actually pay extra attention to see if that'd be a movie that I would like. It was either Oscar nominated or Academy Award winner or 2 thumbs up by Siskel and Ebert. Then I was going to give it a shot.
I do think my opinion on the Oscars is since after they begrudgingly gave the Oscar to the Lord of the Rings Return of the King to kind of like for all of the movies, because they kept snubbing them. I think after that they stopped trying to give it to popular movies at all.
Yeah,
they did. There's a lot to that. Yeah, you don't. The last few have been kind of outside the box, right? So I'm thinking that I don't know. I honestly think it's probably going to be Barbie this year. I think that's probably where it'll be Barbie and Oppenheimer will be up there too. But I have a hunch that that's kind of where the wind is blowing.
I was thinking probably Barbie because it's very much a man-hater movie, and I think the Academy will like that. and Killers of the Flower Moon, I think will get a lot of nods just because of Scorsese. Even though I was bored to tears by it.
I think Rebel Moon wins all of the Oscars.
Rebel Moon, get the fuck out of here. Killer Moon, it didn't quite catch the zeitgeist the way a lot of Scorsese films do. So it probably gets some nominations because it's a Scorsese movie, but it doesn't seem to have the type of buzz his stuff usually does.
Well, and because of the story that they were telling and the content they were covering, it was a story that I think I would say needed to be brought, some attention to, modern attention to. I know it was a big story back in the day. I think that it'll get some nods because of that too.
And here's the other thing I'm going to say too, right? Because of the Oscars, movies like this exist, right? You said that. And I think it's good for people like Zac Efron because it shows his acting range and he's no longer going to just be the pretty boy. Like he can get some serious roles off of this. So
he's done some lately, and his stuff, like into his 30s, he's really grown as an actor and he's pushed himself into taking those things. So I do think this is going to help him further because actors don't want to just do blockbusters, man. They want to challenge themselves. They want to do something that matters. So I think we need these movies. We need movies like this that aren't just popcorn flicks. And this is not a popcorn flick. This is a drown yourself in your popcorn flick.
Very much so. All right. I think we can wrap this one up. Let's end as we normally do with these kind of things. And let's go around the room, give our final thoughts on the film and a score 1 through 10. Because I know you love that part, JD. Mike, you can go first.
You know what? It was a very good movie, not a perfect movie. It did have some flaws, but it is definitely a movie that I would have everybody go out of the way to check out, especially if they're not a pro wrestling fan. I think that if they're a wrestling hardcore nerd and they like to just pick things apart and overthink it, I would say probably not the movie for you. But because of that, I'm gonna probably go like 7.5. It's like a great, like an A-. You know what I mean? Like that. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. JD?
8.5. One of my favorite movies of the year. I didn't get to delve into like the production elements or like I talked a little bit about the cinematography. It's such a well-made movie. It's very artistic. Like the scene where Carrie is in heaven. They do a scene where Carrie is basically in heaven. And it's just like it got me, and I just stuff like that just really helped put it over the top for me. Again, I had to divorce myself a little bit from my wrestler brain, but it really spoke to me.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna echo your score, JD, because I think I gave Godzilla 9, and I would put this like a little below Godzilla for the year for me. So an
I agree.
8.5, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great movie. I am glad my girlfriend said I want to go see that Zac Efron movie. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I think if you haven't seen it yet, like go see it. Because this is definitely going to at least be nominated for a couple Oscars. So go check it
I
out.
hope so.
All right. Well, on that note, let's wrap this one up. Let's see. We can go around the room? Do you either A, have recommendations, or did you learn something on the podcast this week? And Mike, you're our guest, so you can go first.
Yeah, I learned that tampons are not good Christmas gifts from our friend Dave. I never thought to buy. I never thought to buy that for
I love
somebody
it.
for Christmas. But as a husband, I've been a husband for 8 years. I always go to the store whenever it's that time, and I make sure not only to get those, but I also grab some chocolate at the same time. That's always a big winner for all you married fellas out there that have to go to the store for the wives. So if you're gonna buy one, you have to buy the chocolate too. So now, but that is what I learned today.
Mike, you're a pro. I love it. I love it.
He is
Love
a
the
pro.
callback.
He's a pro.
I know I will recommend you check out the Mike and JD show if
Yes, sir.
if you're a Superhero Speak fan, because you'll get a lot of wrestling talk over there. All right, JD.
And good conspiracy talk.
Yes.
I will echo Mike's sentiments. My wife prefer I not buy her those feminine hygiene things. She would rather take care of that herself, and I respect her boundaries and will allow her to do such things. So, but I also learned I made the assumption that wouldn't be a good gift for anybody. That was confirmed on this show. So usually I don't learn shit, but this week I picked something up. Recommendations. I will also recommend that you check out the Mike and JD show. Mike and I have a really good time with this every week. Hosting 2 podcasts a week is a little much for me sometimes, but I have a blast getting to talk to some of my best friends in the world every week when it comes to both you guys. So I really enjoy the time I spend with both of you. I really like doing both these shows, and it lets me flex muscles that I don't normally get to do when I wouldn't even get a chance to do it all if it weren't for both of you guys. So thanks. Having my worlds collide was a lot of fun today.
All right, I'm going to embarrass myself. What was the term that you guys use about the wrestling? The veneer of kayfabe. That's what I learned to speak. Kayfabe.
Yeah.
I'll have to remember that.
Well, and just real quick, kayfabe stands for be fake because it's speaking in Carney. So in Carney, they try to speak backwards a little bit. So it stands for be fake. Yeah.
Really?
JD?
Look it up, JD. Be fake. That's where it came from.
That.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I did learn something on this show.
Yeah, so the carnies, whenever they were trying to fool people at the carnival, and one of like a regular or like a civilian would come by, and they were trying to talk about how they were going to fool people, they would say kayfabe, right? Like and that meant, okay, now you have to switch your language over. You got to be fake. You got to be on now. Well, they because wrestling started in the carnivals, they just kept that terminology and brought it over into pro wrestling. So yeah, kayfabe means be fake, but it's actually a word in the Oxford Dictionary now, so we can all use it.
Cool. All right. I will also recommend go subscribe to the Mike and JD podcast if you're not already over there. If you're watching this on Mike and JD's, come subscribe to Superhero Speak.
Yes.
Help build up JD's ego because he needs that. I also recommend you can head over to superheroespeak.com where you can find the podcast every week. Links to all our social media at the top of the page. Comic book reviews by our good friend Chris. More are coming this year. I've talked to Chris. Everything is fine. He was sick for a little while, but he's back to his old self, and he's going to start doing some more writing soon. And yes, and I also recommend if you see John, boo him for not going to see this movie. So I don't know what we're talking about next week. We will figure that out later. But until then, as always, thanks for watching. And don't let your kid go out the door. Have a good week.